It's time we want to invite our police chief forward. Chief Keene, if you would.
This profession, in my experience, our department, is filled with people that do extraordinary things on a routine basis. Mostly these acts do not make the news and are rarely known to people outside our profession. Today I want to briefly talk to you about one of those people from my personal observations over the last 24 years. In 1997, I was in the hiring process for our department. I just left the Marine Corps, and I really didn't know anyone on the Terre Haute Police Department. And the culture that I had just left me somewhat structured, rule-oriented, and maybe a little stiff. And I know that surprises a lot of you. As I've been offered a conditional job offer, my wife and I bought our first house on South 8th Street. And this provided me my first opportunity to observe a real Terre Haute police officer. As you might have guessed, that officer was Greg Ferency. He and Jennifer lived across the street from us, and I fairly quickly learned that Greg was a narcotics detective, and I also learned that they had the largest dog that I had ever seen. So my initial assessment of Greg, I saw a mysterious undercover drug investigator who at times dressed the part of a sketchy stranger, who published a book, and must spend a significant portion of his salary on dog food. He was certainly not like any policeman that I had ever met. The following summer, Greg worked the Hoot Owl shift in uniform, and I can't remember why. He wasn't there long because he went right back to Drug Task Force. But as a rookie officer, it gave me the opportunity to work with Greg for the first time. I recall going to calls with him and noted how even when we were dealing with the more serious situations, he always maintained a sense of calm. He was always respectful to everybody that he dealt with. People were genuinely drawn to him, and I believe much of his success as an investigator came from how I witnessed people relate to him. But what I remember most was riding with him one night during a pursuit with a driver of the stolen vehicle. It happened right outside this building on South 9th Street here. And the driver reached a speed of, it was a little over 100 miles per hour, and he shut off all his lights right as we got to Spruce Street. It was extremely dangerous, and Greg recognized this and terminated the pursuit. While my inexperience and foolishness initially led me to be disappointed, I quickly started to realize and recognize a couple things about Greg Ferency. First, his intuition and intelligence were two of his strongest attributes. And second, he had failed to fit into the box I placed him in my initial assessment. From 2001 until I became chief in 2019, I worked in the Criminal Investigations Division with Greg. Well, Greg spent most of that time in Drug Task Force or working with the FBI Task Force. When I was a new detective, he helped me with my investigations more times than I can count. Whether it was helping me with telephonic warrants, providing expertise on dealers and their associates, or conducting undercover surveillance for you in his standard jacket and attire, he always helped, and I never heard him complain. He also never treated me like I was stupid, even when I was, and there were many topics that I consider myself stupid in comparison to Greg Ferency. Whether it was methamphetamine labs, terrorism, human trafficking, or criminal gangs. If Greg became involved, he went all in and made himself an expert in that area. Even with his assignment as task force officer, he still helped train the rest of the department in his many areas of expertise. Many people who reach that level of proficiency that Greg had tend to bring with them a level of arrogance. That was not in Greg's character. He was not a flashy person, and he did not seek recognition, but rather was content to quietly do the things that needed to be done to keep people safe. Since becoming chief, I cannot tell you how many times I've relied on Greg to provide threat and risk assessments. As with everything he did, he went all in. You might be thinking you're going to receive a simple assessment on an individual making threats, but with Greg, you would also likely get the 200-year history of the groups the individual belonged to, and maybe even their ancestry going back to their European origins pre-Crusades. Now, while that might seem like a slight exaggeration, it is not by much, and it reflects how seriously Greg was invested in protecting this community. He just didn't do anything halfway. If you need further proof of that, you need only look to Greg's personnel file. The number of school principals, educators, attorneys, previous chiefs, previous mayors, and other members of this community that have written letters attesting to his work ethic are staggering. Over his 30-year career, the words professionalism, dedication, and expertise appear repeatedly in these letters, describing his courtroom testimony, investigations, and talks with educators and students. That all of these diverse community members, that of all these diverse community members, years apart and in different settings, come to the same conclusion is a clear testament to the work that Greg has done for this community and the impression he has left with so many. So after 24 years, I can tell you that for me, my interpretation of Greg Ferency has gone from mysterious drug investigator with unusual clothing and a big dog to one of the most remarkable people that I've ever met. While his appearance may not always reflect it, and his personality never allow it to show, he was likely the smartest person in most rooms he entered. And while he had every right to be arrogant, he had no use for that emotion and would just as soon make you laugh. In the 30 years he dedicated to serving the city, Detective Greg Ferency did more for this community and touched more lives than most people would given 100 years. I consider myself lucky to have had the opportunity to know him.
Thank you, Chief. And now our musical tribute, Amazing Grace, the Policeman's Tribute.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. A man in blue has lost his life in service of the law. The love that makes the sacrifice is the greatest love of all. A policeman was killed today. The reason why I cannot say, I don't know why. He had to die. The man in blue died for me and you. We must remember him too. Flags fly low, let us bow in prayer for fallen policemen everywhere. And remember this, that they are missed. The match burns bright like an evening star, free from the world of